Oh, ladies and gentlemen, it is currently... I don't know if anyone cares about the date. It's just part 3 of Day 9 Daily number 374, where we're looking at Dimaga's crazy Ling Muta style. What we saw is we began with the mid-game. What is he overall trying to do? Well, he's going to try to go Muta Ling, hell, I'll just show you. He's going to try to go Muta Ling, take a third and fourth, get Roach Warren and Roach Speed, and delay Roach production as long as possible. Essentially, this is an elaborate way to get 4 bases up. Then what we did is we looked at the early game, showed all the craziness that can happen, all the flexibility that can go on with the style. And now what we're going to do is show some of the tactics that come up, some of the problems that come up, and why it's really, really, really fun. This will not really get expanded. I'll open it up later on. At the end just to show, but this, I don't want you to become over obsessed with fleshing it out. Late game, whatever you want to do. Again, the late game can be you continuing to go Muta Ling, it can be you continuing to go Roach Hydra, it can be you teching to Zergling Ultralisk and using the Roaches as a go-between. We're going to see from this game, Dimaga end up in a weird situation that helps highlight some of the problems of this style of play. So, alright, cool. Dimaga was unable to break the front necessarily. He's moving his spine crawlers up. That's nifty. He's pulling back to regroup. Anytime you pull back to regroup, you encounter a problem of your opponent being able to start stepping out into the front. We see Dimaga doing a good job of hopefully forcing some of these bad engagements, and look at that. Forces an incredibly bad engagement for Huck by causing a blink up on the high ground, and he picks off all the sentries. Yeah, even in the units lost tab, it doesn't really reflect that. He's been losing a lot of Zerglings. Again, you can tell that by the extremely high units lost and the kind of middle-ishly high resources lost. But either way, this exchange kind of sucked for Huck because he lost so many sentries. But if you end up getting in a mode where you have to pull back even a little bit, you can be suddenly in a horrific spot. That exchange definitely helped Dimaga pick off the sentries, but with no Zerglings, he suddenly cannot look for any more counterattack opportunities. The Zerglings are really what's going to keep you afloat in these games. If you always have 30 Zerglings around, and Protoss knows that, Protoss is always going to be like, oh, I can't move out because then all the Zerglings are going to run into my man, I'm going to die. The Mutalisks, though. These Mutalisks, in combination with the Zerglings, work well. In this sort of individual sense, they don't end up working so well. Huck, with his incredible experience, knows to push out quickly. Most Protosses will not push out quickly, will sit passively, which is why this style works so well. Against tip-top players, they'll know, yeah, I can start getting aggressive real quick here. And there's not that much that Zerg can do about it. That's exactly what we end up seeing. And in fact, at this point in time, I could swear that Dimaga is about to lose this game. Now, ordinarily, you'd be starting to just build a frick ton of Roaches. Normally, this attack would be coming 2 minutes later. But we're seeing that Dimaga is not having to do the kind of focus that other builds do. He's not having desperately to build a ton of drones for these expansions. I mean, he has 60 drones. You're kind of honestly winging it a little bit. Dimaga also trying to look for some counterattack opportunities. Are more units coming up? Maybe I'll pick those off. He eventually runs into the main force, where he ends up having not so good results. And if you were going, say, for, I don't know, Roach, just straight Roach, you'd basically be dead right now if you were in Dimaga's position. You would essentially have lost. Dimaga, though, again, keeping heartily on his upgrades. I like this play a lot when I saw it. This is what I like to call a very lean play. What would be very expensive would be doing something like getting Infestors, getting a Hydralisk Den, changing your tech at all. However, what Dimaga does is he stays on, my brain's shutting off. That's right, okay. He stays on Ling Muta, and he's just going to upgrade him. Now, he could build Roaches right now, but he lost this base, so what is he going to do? He's just going to, with his next flood of units, His next flood of larvae, he's going to be building... I'll just tell you, he builds 16 mutalisks. His money's looking really high, but that's because he has not yet added on any additional units other than Zerglings. And plus, I think it's reasonable for Dimaga to make only Lings in this spot, because he's up against Blink Stalkers. And he has this +2 claws upgrade. So Huck can't quite end the game yet. Now, I want to talk a little bit about where we're at now with where we were at 14 minutes. The biggest problem you will have when you go Ling Muta is these sorts of early timing pushes. These early timing pushes that have, what, a little over 12 Stalkers in them? No other situation in this matchup will you be at 4 bases and a small group of Stalkers are suddenly threatening to kill you. In general, in this matchup, like if you're going Roach and your opponent breaks an expansion, you're about to die because his overall army is so huge. But what I want you to note is that even though this attack will be what gives you a big problem, notice the way the army looks 2 minutes in the future. It's kinda more the same. If he's doing a big push with Stalkers and Zealots, it means he can't possibly follow up with a bunch of Immortals and Colossi and Templar. He can't possibly have those. Mid-game attacks are going to be more threatening, but the follow-up attacks are going to be way weaker. And this is an example of these weaker attacks. I want you to stick in if you end up losing this 3rd base. Because again, you can do things like these crazy Ling-only defenses and end up being decently alright. Look at that, 34 Lings in production. Huck actually basically forced to retreat. I mean, Dimaga's desperately trying to retake his 4th base. But Huck cannot both do a lot of damage with Blink Stalkers and have Colossi and Templar and all that stuff and get an expand up his own. So sticking in it is a really important idea. So then, suddenly, Dimaga ends up getting a ton of Mutalisks up, and he went lean. Flyer upgrade, so he's going to be 1-1. Zergling upgrade, so he's going to be 2-1 very soon. Huck, for some crazy-ass reason, ends up sending all his probes into the fray. Possibly intentionally, but I don't have a good explanation for it. And though Dimaga ends up just sort of easily winning this in a straight-up fashion, Dimaga is still going to exploit this idea of a lot of counterattacking, a lot of hitting him where he's weak. I think that this was maybe not the best decision. This sort of pullback is exactly what you want to do. Now that he's pulled back, where does Dimaga want to go? Well, he wants to swing around and start poking and prodding into here. There's some Warp Prism harass going on by Huck that forces a retreat. But this Muta-Ling stuff is very flexible for this after-the-fact defense. What you don't want to be is at 180 food with nothing but Lings and Mutalisks. That's a fast ticket to death. That actually feels a lot like those players who go Mass Roaches, but this is a pretty fun, clean way, if you are like suddenly dying to this mid-game attack, to just continue to go Muta-Ling. So normally when I select games, I like games that have nice, clean, beautiful executions from start to finish. That's what I really like. Because clean, solid, crushing victories are how you want your games to go 90% of the time. The reason I liked this game, and why I chose it, is again, it had a clear, brilliant middle game from Dimaga. Then it had a lot of craziness at the start, and we showed how wiggle back plops you right in the mid-game. Afterwards, we showed ordinarily you would want to go Roaches, and maybe get some Infestors, and maybe Tech to Hive. But if you are in a bind, stay lean. If you are in a bind, get those extra upgrades for your Zerglings, get those extra upgrades for your Mutalisks, and just stick to this basic set of Muta-Ling. You can deal some direct engagements. We saw Dimaga able to crush a pure Stalker force, and now that he's successfully pushed back this base, he's just going to hit Huck wherever he's weak. And one of the big reasons that Dimaga was able to bounce back from this is that in those early battles, he killed sentries. He killed sentries. General tactic, if you're about to... actually, I would just say if you're up against the wall, just Muta-Ling. Bam. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Dimaga's ZvP Mutalisk Zergling style. We talked tons about the mid-game. In the early game, we just gave some simple rules for how to be flexible, and one big idea we wanted planted in the ground, and the rest of the time, look for counterattack. Try to get his units out of position. Kill those damn sentries, and if you're up against the wall, just go Mutalisk Zergling. Now, when you submit to me these games to Tuesday at day9.tv of you trying to play like Dimaga, and I do want your submissions because I'll be reviewing them tomorrow, please do me the following favors. Include your name and your rank in the replay. Include no more than 2 sentences of description. I don't want an essay because I will not be able to read it. And most importantly, make sure it is in the Zerg vs. Protoss matchup. I'm not kidding. I get submissions of people who say, I won 3-gate robo against a Zerg. And I go, well, actually, that worked out nicely, but I want PvP. Let's take some questions from the Markio question grabber. Markio. Log in. Here's my login information. Let's clear it. Let's start the question capturing. And let's find out your thoughts before we do some amnesia. Amnesia. Mole23. Dear Day 9, is there any way to go apeshit as Zerg with Ling Muta? I mean, getting, and by apeshit he means being aggressive up front. Or is it all about keeping the enemy away always? You can do the sort of engagements, but the important thing about Mutalisk Zergling, or excuse me, let me rephrase it. You can do the direct engagements, but the important thing about Mutalisk Zergling is that pound for pound, it doesn't function well in a direct attack. A direct attack works very nicely for like a roach or for like an immortal. You don't really harass with immortals. But Zergling Muta, they just die really quickly in general. What you can do is start eating away at them, chewing them down, making them feel weak, and then when suddenly they've been worn down for so long, you sweep in and you just crush their remaining forces. The way you would do that is like you take 16 Mutals to the back of his base. He sends 5 Stalkers to defend, so you kill them off. He sends all his Stalkers to defend, so then you run around to the front with your Ling Muta, maybe pick off a couple sentries, some zealots, and then you retreat. And then you do this until his army is just 12 Stalkers, 6 zealots, and a sentry. And you have 24 Mutas and 100 Zerglings. That's when you're like, yeah, and you sweep in there for the kill. It's really, really, really fun to play in this way. But if you just try to get the Zerglings and the Mutalisk up and try to break his front really early on, you'll have a lot of clumsy-looking losses. So be on the lookout for those. God, my nose is so itchy. So itchy. Okay, so Hito Kirim says, Dear Day 9, why did Dimaga make roaches, or why didn't, I see what he's talking about. We're actually going to come over to the game and see exactly what the question is. Why were roaches made during this first attack instead of Zerglings? I think the attack that's being referenced is right here. Right here. Come on, replay. Come on, sweet thing. There it is. So at this point in time, here comes some roaches. Dimaga's only going to make like 6 to 10 roaches, and then he's going to go right back to Muta Ling. The question is, why build these roaches when it seems like our Zerglings are the ones that we're upgrading? The answer is it's about army size. If we're in nothing but small to medium engagements, Zerglings are going to work great. Zergling Mutalisk is going to work great. In those mid to large engagements, roaches work way better. So what basically Dimaga's doing is these roaches are not him saying, damn, I really need 6 roaches to defend this right now. He's hoping that Huck pulls back, or that he can delay Huck enough to get like 30 roaches up, and then he'll be set. So what happened is Dimaga started to go down the roach path, but then he got deterred. So he's starting to go down the roach path, and then he's realizing, oh crap, yeah, I'm going to die right now unless I really start getting a lot of stuff up. I am in a ton of trouble. And then he just starts going all Zergling. So as a matter of fact, even though I made a big deal about the Roach Warren and about the building of the roaches, Dimaga was kind of going, do I go into roaches? Do I stay back for Ling Muta? Do I go into roaches? No, I'm going into Ling Muta. It's this sort of teetering point, and that's again one of the big reasons why you definitely need to keep up that aggression with the Ling Muta to keep him pushed back. So let's just go ahead and take 2 more questions. Hey, I'm getting questions about my chipped tooth again. I have a chipped tooth. See it? That's right. It's because my grandfather hit me in the face with a soccer ball, launched hundreds of feet into the air, landing right upon me. I've told the legend of my chipped tooth many a time. K-Control says, Dear Day 9, when exactly would you start to transition into something given the Muta Ling build? I would say right around the time that you are starting to... once you start your 3rd and 4th, you need to plant the seeds of the transition. I don't say start the transition, I say plant the seeds of the transition. Getting the Roach Warren up. Maybe getting an Infestation Pit up. Hell, maybe just getting a 2nd Evo Chamber to keep upgrading your Zerglings, and then get the Infestation Pit for a Hive. You need to plant the seeds there. Then, after you've started to build some drones, that's when you begin to do the transition. Get a good 20, 30 more drones at your 2 bases before you start doing your big transition. And it's your Muta Ling's job to buy you that much time. So if you're feeling, yeah, wow, I feel a little weak when I do my transition, the solution is not to do the transition earlier. It's to build more Mutalisk Zergling and do the transition later, to push him back farther and harder with the Muta Zerglings. Last question. Seahawk asked the money question. Day 9, what if your opponent plays passively in Turtles? How do you deal with that in this style? It's difficult to counterattack if your opponent is taking advantage of your overall weak mix. Brilliant observation, and as a matter of fact, that's what you want your opponent to do. In this game, we saw Huck going crazy aggressive. Almost never will your opponent go crazy aggressive. Dimaga responded brilliantly, and I wanted you to see Dimaga's answer in the case that you do encounter this aggression. What you will feel if your opponent goes all passive is you think, I'm a 4-base Zerg with a gold against a 2-base passive Protoss. This is awesome. I am going to start massing up huge numbers of roaches, and I'm going to get infestors up. Literally almost any transition you do will feel incredible. The important thing is that your transition is what's going to help you deal with the passive player. The roaches and infestors and teching are what are going to help you against that passive player. The Muta Ling will not really help you in the direct engagement because Muta Ling, again, generally quite weak. Well, with your Muta Ling, all you got to do, though, is make sure you keep him on 2 bases and that he doesn't sneak in a 3rd. This will happen a lot. Make sure you're covering for sneaky 3rds. Dimaga very smartly had this Overlord here ready to spot this 3rd. And later on in the game, this Overlord was instrumental in just sort of noticing what was up with this Overseer. Come on, Dimaga, come on. There he sees it. There he goes. But this should have been moved a little bit earlier. Dimaga, for instance, if he had a Zergling patrolling from here to here, would have been able to see this and kill it off a lot earlier. So please submit to me your attempts of playing with Dimaga's style to Tuesday at day9.tv. I want to see your Muta Ling attempts at aggression, and would be even more so delighted at what sort of transitions you want to pull off. God, that looked cool. That wraps up Day 9 Daily number 374. Amnesia will start in 15 minutes. Until then, enjoy music.